Welcome to this special edition of Pulse of Culture. I'm Karolina Szapland, and we're here in the Krzysztofory Palace in Krakow talking to the fourth generation Krakow Nativity scene maker. Andrzej Malik, thank you for coming to talk to us.
Hello, you're welcome.
So, could you tell us, fourth generation of nativity scenes, what make Krakow nativity scenes so special?
I think that part of it is what you mentioned, that it's a family business usually. So it's a generation after generation passing knowledge, making perfections, changing some bits, reflecting on their current times. And second thing is the love for Krakow, which is transferred in all of the crypts. That makes them very special, because they are more architectural than the, for example, Neapolitan crypts. In Krakowian churches it is very unique and I think most interesting of all.
But could you describe to our viewers what makes Krakow crypts very different than the ones you've mentioned? Because our viewers may think that it's just a little, baby Jesus, the three wise men. But you, as an architect, would you describe them?
Well, you can say it's almost all architecture, because the origin of this tradition is walking from village to village by the carol singers to perform a performance of the birth of baby Jesus. But then they performed it in some sort of scene. And this scene became more and more complicated and sophisticated and reflected more and more of the Krakowian architecture. And in the end, this scene started to be its own thing. So it started to be a crypt, which is the mixture of all of the most famous and most beautiful Krakowian buildings joined together, forming a harmonical but still very colorful and joyful mixture, with still this birth of Jesus scene inside as a center, as the most important thing.
So anyone looking at the Krakow crypts and then walking around Krakow, the actual city, which elements are we to look out for?
I can say from my family perspective, it's somehow universal, but we always embody the Mariacki Church. I think that's the most important. It has very significant two towers, which are different from each other, but very characteristic. And in crypts there are usually the siding towers of the construction. We have a dome in the center, which reflects, which primarily should reflect the dome over the Zygmuntian chapel in Wawel castle. But in our crypts, it somehow more resembles like some Eastern Orthodox church, maybe. I'm not exactly sure how it came to be, but it is very, very unique and like onion shape, and we tried to mimic it. But also, usually we have Wawel castle, sukiennice buildings, ratusz, and sometimes some other buildings that crypt makers love the most. For example, there is this church in Podgórze, which is in romantic historical style. It is a kind of crypt on its own, so we love to embody that. There are churches in Kazimierz. Krakow has I think about 200 churches, so it's lots of to take for a crypt.
And what makes crypts so colorful and so shiny?
Well, my father used to say that it came from the clothing of the Krakowian traditional outfit. Like the Krakowian and Krakowian dancers, they have this very colorful patterns of clothing, but they are usually bright red, blue, green, sometimes black and silver. And in my father's crypt, it's always these colors, which are joined together quite joyfully, and they are designed to be very, very distant from each other, these colors. But sometimes in crypts they are more unified colors. There are crypts that has almost one or two colors, but they are quite rare. Most of the time it has very, very large amount of colors, and the one explanation is for the Krakowian nativity clothing.
And why tinfoil? They're not demure. They very, very vibrant. Yeah. Why that?
I think this is one of the qualities of what szopka is. That is a folklore thing. It's an object of common like folk art, which always has to be a little bit over the top. It has to be very shiny, very colorful, like very strict message. So the more vibrant it is, the more happy it is, the better. And in the times when the cribs were originated, I think the tinfoil was the most shining and most beautiful thing we could find. Of course, crib makers had to collect the chocolates and candies to acquire this kind of material. Nowadays we can buy it, just in the building or insulation store or in the paper store. But then they had to collect it. So it was really treasure. And since it was the most treacherous thing they can buy, they used it.
So you being the fourth generation of crib makers, and do you remember your family in the olden days? How did they source this tinfoil? Was it all from chocolate wrappers?
My grandfather not, because he died before I was born. But my father, yes. Before he could buy a foil, he collected chocolates. He also made some crib entirely out of the chocolate. With the markings and the company names visible. It was for the chocolate factory especially. But in the contest scripts, he tried to hide this markings of the chocolates. But I was born in the 90s, so pretty soon it was easier to buy this kind of thing, so he just bought them.
And your crib this year is a bit of a departure from the usual iconography. Can you describe your szopka?
Oh yeah, it's very difficult. As an architect, I always try to look for new ideas, mostly for the architecture for my cribs. So I think year on year I get further and further in my imagination. Starting with some Gothic architecture when I was a teenager, and then going through some Art Nouveau cribs, some romantic cribs, and the last one was modernic crib, entirely from the 20th century Krakowian architecture. And then I thought, what's next? What's the most inspiring architecture I can find in Krakow? And I found out that it's the trees. That the tree architecture and the nature itself in Krakow is full of very interesting patterns and colors and all of the shapes. And I tried to mimic it and show that also the tree is the primary shelter for a human being. So it can be also shelter for baby Jesus, right? And so I invented the crib that is essentially moss in glass, let's say the self-sustained garden. So it has the szopka shaped like a skeleton. And it is covered with mosses, mushrooms, and other plants, and there is a soil underneath it. So and now it stands by the window, having a lid, so it's completely sealed, and I hope it will live. So that's the idea, that there is this living crib, and it gives shelter to the szopka scene.
So what about next year? Have you got any plans? Will you depart into a futuristic szopka or a brutalist szopka?
Well, I got some plans which I want to keep for myself for now, but they are big, I assure you.
Okay, so when you say they are big, will you go, because there are different categories in the szopka competition. There are the miniature ones and there are the 2-meter ones. Where do you think you will go next year?
Yes, well, I'm not sure exactly, because this idea requires some specific technical skill, and I don't know to what degree I will be able to familiarize with it. So maybe I hope to make it as big as I can, but I don't know if I will be able to. So we'll see.
We'll see. Talking the families of crib makers, it was very clear that there are special characteristics of a crib maker, and that it's a whole family undertaking. How do you feel about this?
Well, looking the most general, I can look for the crib makers. They are usually people in their retirement times, maybe, because they have a lot of time. And the crib making requires horrendous amount of time to make. So if you are retired, if you're not working on 9 to 5, it's the easiest to do. So there is this significant age characteristic, but that's not all. There are also young crib makers, also teenagers crib makers, which are developing and learning new skills. But most of them, there should be somehow nerds about the Krakowian architecture, and people who just spend entire of their free time to make a crib.
And as a child, do you remember your kitchen taken over by all the shiny tinfoil and your mum, I don't know, How did she feel about?
I don't have to remember. It's still happening. You know, year by year, this kitchen is taken over, and it's like, it's completely obvious to all of the people in the house that it is like that. Some crib makers have their own like workshops, but in our home it was not possible. So we have that.
And looking at cribs, is it possible to see the specific style of your family just by having a glance at a crib?
Yeah. I think so. It's not very easy, like from a spot like this one thing, but I think the general composition of the crib is very distinct. We have always this three-tower structure in which the center tower is the dome and the two siding towers are the Mariacki towers. It seems obvious, but nowadays a lot of cribs don't have that. They have even large amount of towers, or they have this structure changed somehow, and it's fine. But in our family, it's always like that. And even me, if I am creating new crib and making it as weird as I can, even this year's one, it has the dome on the center and has the Mariacki bushes like towers in the sides. So it's always like in our family, and I just can't get rid of that.
Okay. And what about the first floor? Because I understand that the second floor always have the nativity scene with baby Jesus, but the first floor traditionally should have some sort of a commentary on the passing year, or some sort of a nod to Krakow. What do you include in that first floor?
Yeah. Well, actually, I had all the things in the ground floor because I don't have much space for figurines. The figurines in my this year's crib were like little ghosts, like wandering around in the forest. So I didn't distinguish much between them, between their characteristics. But before I made several cribs making a commentary on current situation, and basically if I want to describe it how I design it, it's that I always have to encompass some biblical elements of the birth of Jesus, the Holy Family, the Jesus, and then some shepherds who are in the story, the three kings or three wise men, as you call them. Then some elements from the Krakow folklore, from the legends. For example, Pan Twardowski, which is like Polish Faust, the Wawel dragon maybe, or some other parts of the Krakowian legends. Krakowian and the Krakowian girl in their clothing also. Sometimes the Highlander couple also comes with it. So this is this element of folklore. And then I put some figures of real contemporary. So maybe some people from the culture, or from the like intellectual world, or anything else that's related to current year that the crib was made. For example, last year when I was making this modernistic szopka crib, I put the giant robot to encompass the rise of the AI and that it can goes both bad and good ways. So this robot was dragged down from the sides by the angel and dragged down from the other side by the devil. So this was the commentary of current affairs. An example how you could put this richness of the word in this kind of work of art.
Andrzej, thank you so much for talking to us.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
We were talking to Andrzej Malik, fourth generation Krakow nativity scene maker here in Krzysztofory Palace, right by the old town in Krakow. Merry Christmas. I'm Karolina Shapland. This was Pulse of Culture.